This is Chino Achebe. I have written in my small book entitled The Trouble with Nigeria that Nigerians will probably achieve consensus on no other matter than their common resentment of the Igbo. The origin of the national resentment of the Igbo is as old as Nigeria and quite as complicated. But it can be summarized thus. The Igbo culture, being receptive to change, individualistic and highly competitive, gave the Igbo man an unquestioned advantage over his compatriots in securing credentials for advancement in Nigerian colonial society. Unlike the Hausa Fulani, he was unhindered by a wary religion, and unlike the Yoruba, he was unhampered by traditional hierarchies. This kind of creature, fearing no god or man, was custom-made to grasp the opportunities, such as they were, of the white man. When you think of yourself too highly than you ought to, that's when you begin to say things like this. One of the things I did not mention, though, is, and I'm not going to tell the history today, the first set of Igbos who worked with the missionaries. I'm writing it down, please. There's a question that needs to be asked. What was the class, social class, of the first set of Igbos who worked with the missionaries? That's one question. Number two, when you read the Willings Commission report of 1958, it mentioned that certain people did not like them. And I'm going to read that just to make sure that we have a balanced outlook on these conversations. It talked about how they moved out. So it says more than 98% of people who inhabit the area, the Igbo plateau of the eastern region, are Igbo and speak one language, though of course with certain differences of dialect. There are nearly 5 million of them, and they are too many for the soil to support. They are vigorous and intelligent and are pushed outward in every direction, seeking a livelihood by trade or in service in the surrounding areas of the eastern region, in the western region, in the north and outside Nigeria. Then it says here, they are no more popular with their neighbors than is usual in the case of an energetic and expanding people whose neighbors have a more leisurely outlook on life. In other words, you move into spaces and then you're very, very, active. But that's not even what, was the issue. The issue was this. Two issues. Number one is the fact that when you listen to the Sardauna, the interview he had in 1964 with the British, with the BBC, he mentioned that when an Igbo man gets to a particular place, he wants to push out. We're going to get to that eventually. He wants to push out and lead everybody. That ambition can be good, but if it's not curtailed, it can be a reason for people to actually have issues with you. It's like, imagine you go to a particular company and they ask that question. They say things like, where do you see yourself in the next 5 years? There's an interview of Frank Donga when he used to do all those skits. When they asked him, where do you see yourself in the next 5 years? He said, I'll be the boss of this company. I'll be the CEO. When you speak, now, Igbos may not speak like that, but before independence, they acted like that. The CEO then begins to look at you like, are you here to take my place? So naturally, it's competition. So the real issue is the fact that you are competitive. Now, that can be an advantage because it helps you get ahead, but it can be a disadvantage because it stops you from being courteous. It stops you from collaborating. If you are overtly competitive, it will be very difficult for you to collaborate with other people, which is why collaboration doesn't really work that well. So when it says something like, oh, everybody hates us, by the way, I don't like this statement because it just it makes people think a funny way about the other parts of Nigeria. Everybody hates us. That's the only thing that will make Nigeria come together, a common resentment of the Igbos. Number one, let me speak for my people. So what you see in Willings Commission is talking about the Ogoja province, the people in the eastern region, and the fact that they spread. So the first thing, of course, is the fact that yes, they got into their spaces, but because of ambition, they were pushing regardless of social order. So you get into a particular place, there's a social structure. And yes, you can break social, ceilings, but there's a way about it. You have to collaborate in some instances, but they don't really care. They just want to do whatever they want to do or wanted to do. The second part is that some of the people that they were going into their spaces, on a normal day, Igbos should not be able to go to their spaces, if not for the British. In other words, the audacity that they had at the time was that the British was around. I've talked about it before, but let me just read it again. It says here that the coastal chiefs grew on their trade with the merchant ships, and they adopted customs, clothing, and housing. Then it says, than those of the peoples of the interior on whom they had at first preyed for slaves. They came during the 19th century to regard the people of the interior as backward and ignorant, and it was therefore, this is the point, it was therefore a blow to their pride as well as to their pockets when the Igbos began to push outwards into the surrounding fringe on the country, and particularly into the Calabar area, to take up land, to grow rich, to own houses and lorries, and occupy posts in public services. So where we're going is how they occupied the posts. But let's start with the fact that they grew rich and owned land and owned houses. But you see, to those people, a generation before then, it's not, you can't really call it a Western narrative. It's not, the person was not sitting down in the UK writing it. He was in Nigeria there was a commission that lasted for about 8 months. This is a report of that commission. So this is not just a Western perspective. It's literally what you discover by observing what you had on hand. So this is not a book. There are books that we've read, but this particular one is not a book. This is a report, and they are different. So here's the point. The point is that, one, there's the ambitious part of it, but then the second part is that these folks were those that they had preyed upon before then. So it was a blow to their pride. So naturally speaking, it will be difficult for you to want to work with those people. Now, that's not a story for Nigeria, it's a story for that particular region. The one for the north is mostly about the ambition, and you will hear that again when I play the video by the Sadauna. It's more about ambition. But the one for the south is not so much about ambition, but about the fact that they used to be the ones that these guys looked up to, and then when the British arrived, they changed the social order, and now they have to, look at the people that they used to prey upon growing rich around them. But the other thing also is that they also noticed that the public service was being filled by them, first by the British, and then later by themselves.